All right, hi guys. So as promised, this is going to be a video of all the answers I have given recently about the TOK IA exhibition. What I will do is I will post the question and then there will be the audio for what my answers were to these questions. I'll try to post a timestamp list as well for you so that you can just jump to the questions that are most helpful for you. Let's get started. My IA is 700 words. Is that a problem? Kind of, yeah. Look, the IB has given you 950 words, and these words are an opportunity for you to demonstrate your understanding of TOK and your ability to apply TOK theory to the real world. If your IA is significantly below the word count, I'm wondering why you have not taken advantage of the space that you are given, and I'm also kind of assuming that you just don't know very much. My advice to you is to write to a point slightly above the word count and then revise. Streamline your language to bring yourself down to the proper word count. Don't waste your opportunity. Do we need exactly 315 words for each object commentary? Do you need to have exactly the same word count for each object? No. Does each object commentary need to demonstrate the same level of reflection and merit? Yes. Think of it like this. Each object commentary is exploring a different plausible answer to your selected prompt. 50% of the IB TOK course's aims focus on that idea of valuing multiple plausible answers. So you need to present multiple plausible answers in a way that shows all three answers have equal merit. By presenting balanced explorations of three plausible answers to your selected prompt, you're meeting the course aims. This will probably mean that you have a similar word count for each object commentary. However, it's less important that your word count matches and more important that the quality of your exploration matches. Also, the 315 word part of the question is a bit misleading. So yeah, the maximum word count for the IA is 950. If you divide that by 3 objects, you get hold on, get my calculator. You get 316.67 words per object. But that's not an exact number per object, right? Shift and change as you need to. And also remember, you might want to include that optional introduction paragraph at the beginning of the IA. And if that's the case, those words count, and you'll have to subtract those words from your object commentaries. Keep that in mind as well. All right, should our final submission be on the same template as the draft? Yeah, it should. In fact, it would be nice if you would use the template properly this time. Too many of you never even bothered to delete the directions on the template, which baffles me. And then other people, they didn't put the citations on the works cited section. So many people didn't put the word count. You have to write down the word count. It's deeply, deeply important. And the number should be the number in the 900s. It shouldn't be broken down per section. It's the total number of words. Please make sure that you do complete the template correctly and in a quality manner, meaning proofread what you wrote. Don't use an and sign or numbers when you could just write the word out. Use academic language. This is a submission that's going to the IB. You need to use the template right. You need to write in academic fashion. No emojis, please. There were some people who put emojis in. I don't understand. Use correct punctuation as well. And the other thing about the template is we gave you a template so that everything that you're sending to the IB is uniform, and that means it's easy for the examiner to follow. By making poor use of that template, you're sending a clear message to the IB examiner that you don't really care about this IA. And I ask, is that really the message that you want to send to someone who holds your IB diploma in their hands? Just use the template properly. Use the template and then use it properly, guys. Thank you. How do I know my claims are claims? Okay, well, claims are answers to questions. And in the case of this IA, the claims are answers to your prompt. So why don't you try to have like a conversation with a friend, have them ask you your prompt, and then you will answer with your claim. If someone was like, hey, and just asked that prompt as a normal question, would it be natural that you would respond with that claim? You could also think back to middle school. I know I keep on saying this, but in middle school, some teacher taught you that the best way to answer a question is just to rephrase the question as the first part of your sentence or your answer. Like if someone was like, hey, how do you know that? You might answer, well, I know that because. So you know that part of the question, I know that part of the answer. Or if someone was like, hey, can some things be unknowable? Your answer might be, yeah, some scientific things can be unknowable because. Your claims should be short and sweet, easy to follow, and they should be like a direct, explicit answer to the prompt that you've selected. Do my claims have to be different for each object? Yes. Short answer, yes. Look, you have to keep in mind that the TOK course has particular aims, and some of those aims, two of those aims, are focused on the idea of you being able to entertain and explore multiple plausible answers to the same question. You also have to remember that having different claims means that you're providing yourself with different opportunities to demonstrate different knowledge and different skills. If you keep on saying the same thing in each object commentary, you're really only showing that you have a limited understanding and a limited ability to apply critical thinking. Why would you show yourself to be limited when you're definitely not limited? Just 3 different answers, guys. You can do it. In my draft, my claims are all the same. Does that mean I need to make significant changes? Yeah, most likely. Sorry. My advice to you is to make a list of all the different possible ways your prompt could be answered. Look at the different claims and reflect on whether your objects that you have selected already still meet the needs of that claim to prove it. If the objects still work and you can prove the claim using those same objects, just keep the same objects and make your adjustments. However, if they're not the right objects, you have to change the objects to support whatever claims you're writing. If you don't do that, you're not doing what the IA asks. So yeah, you're going to have to think about changes. I have a claim, but I put it at the end of the commentary. Is that okay? I'm going to say no. I want you to think about it like this. If you put your claim at the end of your object commentary, you are asking the examiner to walk blindly through your meandering thoughts, all the while wondering, what's the point? Does the student know what they are even talking about? Where am I going to end up? I don't think you want your examiner thinking that. It's much better to just answer your prompt outright and then unpack and prove your claim is true by using evidence from your object's real-world context. This is a classic argumentative writing strategy and structure. It works. I would use it. Also, think about it like this. If you start with your claim and then you state that your claim is best justified through your object, you are fulfilling the needs of the assessment instrument kind of in the order that the assessment instrument's written. Basically, work with the system is what I'm telling you. The easier you make it on the examiner, the better off you are going to be. Well, these are like a series, like 4 questions that all kind of relate to each other, and they're about the themes. So, what are those themes again? How do we use them? Do we have to use them? And what if I want to use several themes? Those themes at DAA, at least, are knowledge and the knower, knowledge and technology, and knowledge and language. It is not mandatory for you to use these themes in the IA. However, they are a good way to guide yourself. Your options for the IA are quite broad. So there's lots of different directions you can answer the prompts in, and sometimes this can feel really overwhelming. So one way to try to combat that feeling of being overwhelmed by the prompts is to just pick one of the themes that will narrow your choices, and that'll be the direction you go in. So you can do that. The themes are there to help you if you need help. Another reason you might want to use a theme is that you have notes based on these themes. You also have chapters in Cognity based around these themes. So that means you should have concepts and jargon all written down and available to you. So if you remember something kind of vaguely and you're trying to explain something and you remember in the back of your mind that there are words that this course is trying to teach you for those things, you can always just go back and reference those parts of your notes or your textbook. And that would help you construct a more like cohesive commentaries. So it really can help you, but it's not mandatory. If you get into that situation where you're interested in using multiple themes, like you feel like the first object is more towards knowledge and technology, but the second object is more towards knowledge and the knower. If that's the case, what I say to you is on that template, just delete the line that asks you what theme you're doing and just don't specify. And then go ahead and use 2. But don't specify that you're doing knowledge and the knower and then switch halfway through to knowledge and technology. That would not be good. Oh, this is classic here, guys. I just got my object images from Google Images. Is that okay? No. I don't know how many times I've said this. This makes my heart hurt. Okay, like, don't take images from Google Images. Don't take images from a stock photo source. And in most cases, don't take images from articles or websites unless like the article or the website is your object. For example, if you want to discuss emotion detection AI, you should probably just go down to the AI lab here at DAA and take a photo of the emotion detection AI that we have in the lab. Like we actually have one, and just go take a picture of it, right? But if you are interested in discussing the purported results of emotion detection AI from testing on the Uyghurs, you could cite an image taken in a BBC article. And there's been a recent BBC article where they actually have an image of the results from one of those tests. And then your object would be the results as reported by the BBC. And then if you wanted to discuss the purported use of emotion detection AI on the Uyghurs itself, and you're looking at sort of an event as the object, that becomes a little bit more complicated, I think, especially with this one, because there's not a lot of photographic evidence of this happening, although it's being reported. But there are human rights articles and reports being done on this. And so you could always get one of those reports. They're online and screenshot it. And then the report becomes your object. And then you could talk about the situation and sort of the human rights groups speaking out about it. And that would work. But again, it's not just needing a picture of a frog. So going to a random website about frogs and taking a screenshot of a frog on that website, that doesn't work. That's just stealing. That's not your object. Okay, this one's kind of similar. So I pulled my images from newspaper articles. Is that okay? Look, I'm going to say it again. It is only okay if your object is the article itself. In this case, why aren't you screenshotting the whole article? Or in the case that your object is a photo of an event that was published by a certain source. In that case, the object is a photo published by or taken by whoever, like whatever outlet. And that becomes part of the real world context, is the publication of it, or the event being reported on. All right, this one's a longer question. So it was difficult to use a book as an object because I found myself explaining the plot in order to discuss the object's real world significance. However, doing that takes up from the word count, and I no longer have enough words to answer the prompt in a manner in which is relevant to the object, the book in this case. How do I avoid this? Always remember that your objective is to answer the prompt question. You are using the object and its real-world context as evidence of your answer and your explanation. So evidence that whatever your answer is exists in the real world. In this case, you would only include information about the book that is directly related to whatever TOK points you are making. The plot in its entirety is probably not necessary to prove your point. Only include that which proves what you're saying. In particular, you should avoid, whether or not you're looking at a book or any other kind of object, you should avoid having one isolated paragraph that just describes the object and has no explicit link to the points in the prompt. That wouldn't make sense. You'll find yourself, you'll overwrite if you do that. You'll include too much description and not enough actual use of the object. The point is, again, that you are answering the question you selected. The question is about knowledge, and then you are proving that your answer is true by showing that it is true through the object and the object's real-world context. Another little bit longer one. So I have selected the prompt about personal experience and knowledge. My objects are really personal, but on your feedback you wrote that I need to include less anecdote. What do you mean? How can I answer the question, what is the relationship between personal experience and knowledge, without using personal anecdote? I think I wrote avoid anecdote or be careful how much anecdote you include in a lot or on a lot of people's drafts. And I think this question that's being asked is actually better dealt with into two parts. So let me address the first bit. So the first bit is very similar to the book summaries, and this goes for a lot of you who included anecdote, is that a lot of you felt like you had to provide a lot of background information or details to your anecdote, and that ended up distracting, and it meant that it was more about your anecdote and less about TOK and answering the question. So remember, again, that your object is always there to help you prove that your claim is true. So only include the information that is important to prove your point is true. Don't add layers of detail. It's not necessary for you to have layers of detail that are not directly related to the prompt. Now, the other thing that sort of concerns me about this question is the interpretation of the words personal experience in this prompt. So when the prompt, I'll say the prompt again. So the prompt is, what is the relationship between personal experience and knowledge? They don't mean your personal experience. They just mean the concept of personal experience, firsthand knowledge, right? Experiential knowledge. They're talking about that. And I think this question is more about the role of personal experience in knowledge interpretation, or the role of personal experience in the rejection or acceptance of knowledge, or maybe even the role of personal experience or, experiential knowledge in the valuation of knowledge, right? But it's more about the concept of personal experience than it is about your personal anecdotal experiences. Can you use personal anecdotal experiences to prove your answers? Yes, you can, but you don't have to. Like, it's not required with this prompt at all. And if you feel like your personal story and your personal anecdote is the point of the commentary and TOK is not, then there's a problem. Okay, next question. I have picked the prompt, can new knowledge change established values or beliefs? In your feedback, you warned me against treating this prompt as a yes or no question. But it is a yes or no question. So what do you mean? Adorable. Okay, so any of the prompts that seem like yes or no questions, that means a prompt that starts with can or does or is, should not be treated so simplistically that your answer is yes or no. In most cases, your claims will have a because. So if your prompt is, hey, can new knowledge change established values or beliefs? You could answer, yes, new knowledge can change established values because, and then you have to say because, why it can. Or you could say, no, new knowledge can't change beliefs because, and then you have to say why. The because is here to create that differentiation between your answers. You could also answer the prompt using qualifiers. So again, hey, can new knowledge change established values or beliefs? Yes, new knowledge can change established beliefs. However, only to the extent that, or you could say, no, new knowledge cannot change established values if, or you could say, yes, new knowledge can change established belief, but only for those individuals who are part of the blank community of knowers. Fill in the blank, right? You can also refine the knowledge scope. So you could say something like, yes, new scientific knowledge can change established beliefs. However, only to the extent that, and then you say the extent. You see, you have to play with the scope of the question as you are writing those claims, and you refine those claims and you narrow those claims. Next question. I picked the prompt, how can we distinguish between knowledge, belief, and opinion? One of my objects focused on knowledge, one of my objects focused on belief, one object focused on opinion. Your feedback says that this approach is problematic. Why? It seems well organized to me. Okay, so the issue here, and it's not only you, other people have had this issue with other prompts, is that you're not actually answering the question. You focused in so much on the part that's about knowledge, belief, and opinion that you're not paying attention to what the question's asking. The question is asking, how can we distinguish between? So this means that your three claims, your three answers, will have to focus on what makes these three things different and how, emphasis on the how, we can tell them apart. One way, perhaps a better way, to organize your objects might be to have each object representing a different method that you could use to detect the difference between knowledge, belief, and opinion. That could work. There are lots of other ways you could do it, but that would be focused on the how part, right? What's the answer to the how? Well, a method. Next question. I picked the prompt, is bias inevitable in the production of knowledge? I answered yes in all three claims because I think the answer is yes. But your feedback says that my IA doesn't demonstrate enough diversity. What do you mean? How can I be diverse when I think the answer is yes? Funny. Okay. So I answered the yes or no prompt issue earlier, so I would reference that. And one of the things I highlighted in that is how you should be using the word because or some other qualifier to create diversity in your answers or in your claims. There are some other ways that you could also diversify your answers with this prompt, for example. So there are lots of different types of bias. Cultural bias, cognitive bias, media bias, all kinds of bias. And even within those really broad categories of bias, there are dozens and dozens of types of bias. So your claim could specify a type of bias. So if the question is, hey, is bias inevitable in the production of knowledge? You could answer yes. When conducting research, individuals inevitably experience anchoring bias because. Right, so I have specified anchoring bias. I've also specified a situation in which knowledge is being produced. In this case, it is knowledge production through people conducting research. There are other ways you can produce knowledge that's not research-based, but I chose that one. So I actually narrowed it in 2 different ways that way. Another way that you could also narrow things down is you could actually narrow down who the knower is specifically. So not just the method of production, not just the bias, but who the knowers are that you're talking about. So I think I can refine the same one. Maybe if someone was like, hey, is bias inevitable in the production of knowledge? I might answer, yes. When average consumers conduct product research, they inevitably experience anchoring bias because. So in this case, the knowers are average consumers who are conducting research on a project. The because part, I would focus on the cognitive norms that happen when comparing something, because that's what anchoring bias is. And then my object, what would I use? I know what I'd use. I'd use a screenshot of canoeing.com's classified page, because I used that page when I was doing some research, when I was trying to compare canoes and I was looking to buy a canoe. And I am definitely an average consumer, and I definitely experienced anchoring bias because I inevitably compared all the canoe prices to the first one that's listed. And then if I were developing out this object commentary, I would then probably talk about how average consumers are more susceptible to anchoring bias because we lack detailed, complex knowledge, but a marketing professional or someone with really high level of knowledge about a product would be less susceptible. Like my uncle, who's a canoe maker, he would not experience the anchoring bias that I would experience because he has so much more knowledge, and that would really prevent him from fixating on the first thing he saw when he started researching prices for canoe. Don't use my example though, guys. That's my example. No one out there is buying a canoe. I'm the only person thinking about buying a canoe and who has an uncle who makes canoes. That's just too bizarre. Don't use mine. Totally easy to check for plagiarism on that one. Ultimately, when you look at my example, I not only narrowed the claim by addressing a particular type of bias, I also narrowed it down by talking about a particular type of knower and a particular type of knowledge production. I also included that because bit that will explain the bias and why that bias is inevitable. Ultimately, by narrowing the scope of your claims and by allowing yourself to really unpack a claim and an object, you are demonstrating a deeper understanding of the course and more skill, and you are really demonstrating a higher cognitive level than just giving a surface analysis. So it's a good idea to narrow the scope of your claims so that you can really give a meaningful response. Okay, guys, those were the main questions that I answered over the last few classes. I hope that this was helpful for you, and good luck.